At my daughter's high school graduation dinner, my mother lifted her glass and said, "We're so proud, and we just wish we could have done more to help with college. Money's been so tight for us." My daughter smiled and thanked her grandmother for everything. And I set down my glass and said, "Mom, before we toast, I need to ask you in front of everyone where the $41,000 in Emma's college account went, because I have the statements, and it wasn't tight for my sister's kids." Let me back up. My name is Talia Ford. I'm 42 years old, and my parents spent my daughter's college fund on my sister's children, quietly over years the same way they'd once done something to me. In a pattern I swore would never touch my own child, and did anyway, because I trusted them the way you're supposed to be able to trust your parents. This is the story of the day I stopped trusting them, and what it cost, and what it saved. I have to start with my own childhood, because this is a story about a pattern, and the pattern is generational. I grew up the overlooked daughter. My younger sister, Bianca, was the golden child, the pretty one, the charming one, the one whose needs were emergencies and whose wants were priorities. I was the responsible one, the one who was fine, which in my family meant the one who could be given less because she'd never make a fuss. I learned early that love in my family was distributed unequally, and that my portion was smaller, and I built a life around not needing much, because needing much was how you got hurt. There was a specific wound when I was 18. My grandparents had left money for education, for both grandchildren, Bianca and me, and when I got to college age, I was told the money was mostly gone, that times had been hard, that I'd need loans. I took the loans. I worked through school. Years later, I learned the money hadn't been gone at all. It had been redirected, most of it, to things Bianca needed, because Bianca's needs always came first. I'd paid for my own education, while my inheritance quietly funded my sister's life. I made my peace with it mostly. I told myself my parents did their best, that they loved us both in their flawed way, that holding on to it would only poison me. And I moved forward, and I built a good life, and I had a daughter, Emma, and I promised myself one thing above all. The pattern stops here. My child would not be the overlooked one. My child would be given what she was owed. And here's the terrible irony that this whole story turns on. I let my parents help set up Emma's college fund, because I wanted to believe they'd changed, because I wanted my daughter to have grandparents who showed up for her. Because part of me, the 18-year-old who'd been told the money was gone, desperately wanted to be proven wrong about my own family, wanted this generation to be different, wanted to finally have the loving parents I'd told myself I had. So when Emma was young and my parents offered to contribute to a college account for her and to help manage it alongside what my husband and I put in, I said yes. I said yes with my whole hopeful heart, and over the years. My husband and I contributed faithfully, and my parents contributed too, and the account grew, and I felt something heal a little. My daughter would have what I didn't, and my parents were part of giving it to her, and maybe the pattern really was broken. The pattern was not broken. I had simply handed it a new victim and trusted the people who'd hurt me to guard the thing that mattered most to me. Here's how I found out. Emma was 17, college applications underway, and it was time to actually look at the money, to understand what we had, what we could afford, where she could apply. And my husband asked me to get the full statements on the college account, the one my parents had helped manage. I called for them, expecting to feel that healed feeling again, expecting to see years of careful growth. The account had $1,100 in it. I thought it was an error. I checked again. I pulled the full history, and what I found broke something in me that I'm not sure has fully healed. Over the years, while my husband and I had faithfully contributed, my parents had been withdrawing. Steadily. Tens of thousands of dollars, pulled out of my daughter's college fund, $41,000, all told, gone. And when I traced where it went, with the sick certainty already forming in my gut, it went where everything in my family had always gone. To Bianca's children. My sister's kids, their private school tuition, their activities, their needs. My parents had drained my daughter's college fund to pay for my sister's children's education, the exact same crime they committed against me a generation earlier, except this time I'd handed them the victim myself, in a fit of hope, believing they'd changed. I want to describe what that felt like, because the money was the smallest part. It felt like being 18 again, being told the money was gone, except worse, because this time it wasn't my loss, it was my daughter's, and I was the one who'd trusted them with it. I had spent my whole adult life promising myself the pattern would stop with me, and I'd broken that promise without even knowing it, because I'd wanted so badly to believe my parents loved my child differently than they'd loved me. They didn't. They'd looked at Emma's college fund and seen, the way they'd always seen anything that belonged to me, a resource to be redirected to the Golden Branch. And the cruelest detail, they'd never told me. For years, they'd sat across from me at dinners, let me believe the fund was growing, let me plan around money they'd already taken, watched me feel healed by their generosity, while they quietly bled my daughter's future into my sister's children's present. They'd let me feel loved while robbing my child. Here is what I did. For the first time in my life, when it came to my family, I did not make peace with it. I did not tell myself they'd done their best. Because it wasn't me anymore, it was Emma, and my child's future was not something I would absorb quietly the way I'd absorbed my own erasure. First, I got the complete records, every withdrawal dated, and where I could trace it, where it went. $41,000, documented, out of Emma's account, correlated with Bianca's children's expenses. The pattern in black and white, undeniable. Second, I talked to a lawyer because I needed to understand what my options actually were. The account structure mattered, how my parents had helped manage it, what authority they'd had, whether draining it constituted something legally actionable or merely a profound moral betrayal. The lawyer's read was that depending on how the account was titled and what my parents had been authorized to do, there was potentially real legal exposure. That if they'd had a fiduciary or custodial role and diverted the funds, that could be recoverable. But she also said something that stuck with me. Sometimes the legal case matters less than the family reckoning. What do you actually want here, the money or the truth spoken out loud? I thought about that for a long time. And I realized I wanted both, but the truth more. Because the money could maybe be recovered, but the thing that had really been stolen from Emma now, and from me a generation ago, was the truth. My family ran on a lie. That everyone was loved equally, that the favoritism didn't exist, that the missing money was always just hard times. That lie had cost me my education and my sense of worth, and now it had cost my daughter $41,000, and I was done letting it stay unspoken. Third, I made a decision about Emma. My husband and I sat down and looked at what we could do, and we made sure, whatever happened with my parents, that Emma would be okay. We restructured, we sacrificed, we made a plan so that my daughter's future would not be defined by what her grandparents stole. Because breaking the pattern didn't just mean exposing the theft. It meant making sure Emma landed safely regardless, the way no one had done for me. Then came the graduation dinner, the whole family celebrating Emma. And my mother, who knew nothing of what I'd discovered, lifted her glass and said the thing that ended my silence. We're so proud, and we just wish we could have done more to help with college. Money's been so tight for us. The same words, almost exactly, that I'd been told at 18. Money's been tight. As if the $41,000 they'd taken from Emma's fund and given to Bianca's kids had simply evaporated in hard times. And my daughter, my sweet Emma, who knew none of it, smiled and thanked her grandmother for everything. That was the moment. Watching Emma thank the woman who'd robbed her, with the same grateful innocence I'd once had, about to inherit the same lie I'd inherited. I would not let the pattern complete itself. I would not let my daughter grow up, like me, and discover the truth a decade too late. I set down my glass. Mom, before we toast, I need to ask you in front of everyone where the $41,000 in Emma's college account went, because I have the statements, and it wasn't tight for my sister's kids. The table froze. My mother's face went white. Bianca went still. For years, I said, you helped manage Emma's college fund. My husband and I contributed to it faithfully, and over those same years you withdrew $41,000 from it, and it went to Bianca's children, their private school, their activities. You drained my daughter's college fund to pay for my sister's kids, and then you sat here tonight and told Emma money was tight, and let her thank you for everything. I looked at my mother, and then at my father, and I said the thing that had been 24 years coming. You did this to me, too, when I was 18. Education money that was gone, it went to Bianca then, just like this went to her kids now. I made peace with it because it was my loss, and I told myself you love me anyway. But this is Emma. And I will not sit here and watch you do to my daughter exactly what you did to me, and smile through a toast about how proud you are. I have the statements, all of it. This stops now. Here is how it ended, in the bittersweet register that a betrayal this deep can only ever have. There was no clean triumph, because you cannot win against your own parents in a way that feels like winning. But there was truth, finally, spoken out loud in front of the whole family, and truth was what had always been stolen. My parents did what they'd always done. They minimized, they justified. They said Bianca's kids really needed it, and Emma would be fine, and I was making a scene over money. But the statements didn't minimize, and for the first time the whole family saw the pattern laid bare. The golden branch fed, the overlooked branch drained, across 2 generations in black and white. I pursued recovery of the funds, and because of how the account had been handled, I was able to get a meaningful portion back. Not all, but enough to matter. Enough that combined with what my husband and I had restructured, Emma's future was secure. My parents paid it back rather than face the alternative, which told me everything. They'd rather return the money than have a court examine what they'd done. Emma is in college now. Safe, funded, okay. She knows the truth, I told her, gently, because I would not let her grow up inside the lie that had cost me so much. It was hard for her. It's hard to learn your grandparents robbed you. But it was better than the alternative, better than discovering it at 30 like I did, better than building a false picture of a family that loved her equally. She knows who showed up for her parents. And she knows the pattern, which means she can watch for it, which means it truly does stop with her. My relationship with my parents is mostly over. Bianca and I don't speak. I grieve that, I do, even now, even knowing everything. Because they're my family and some part of me will always be the overlooked daughter hoping to finally be seen. But I made a choice at that dinner that I'd never made before. I chose my daughter over my hope. I chose Emma's future over my lifelong wish that my parents would someday love me the way they loved Bianca. And choosing her was the easiest hard thing I've ever done. For a generation, my parents took what was mine and gave it to my sister and called it hard times, and I let them because I loved them and wanted their love back. And they did it to my daughter. And I discovered that the love I'd have sacrificed anything to earn for myself, I would not sacrifice $1 of my child's future to keep chasing. They spent my daughter's college fund on my sister's children, the same way they spent mine, and expected me to swallow it the same way I always had. But there's a difference between what you'll accept for yourself and what you'll accept for your child. They never understood that difference. It's the difference between the daughter who stayed quiet for 24 years and the mother who finally, in front of everyone, refused to. The pattern stopped with me, not because I was strong enough to protect myself, because I was finally, for Emma, strong enough to stop protecting them.